And we're hearing a peace negotiation is not possible at this moment. Those comments coming today from the UN Secretary General. He says he sees no immediate possibility of reaching a ceasefire in Ukraine, as both sides are convinced that they can win. So what does this mean for the 14th month of this war and standoff between the two nations? I'm joined now by retired U.S. Army Major General William Enyart. Sir, always a pleasure. So a peace talk not possible right now, according to the Secretary General. Would you agree?
Well, I certainly agree with that, Marni. At this point, Putin still believes he can win. Zelensky has done a terrific job with Ukraine, gathering Western support, NATO support, and with the support from NATO, the Ukrainian forces have been able to defend their country and, in fact, take back a large part of what the Russians had seized. So at this point, we're at a stalemate. Whether or not Ukraine will manage to break through and interrupt the Russian supply lines remains to be seen.
So interesting listening to what Vladimir Putin said during the Victory Day events and parade outside the Kremlin. He said civilization is at a turning point. I think most would actually agree with that. But he also said that Russia is under attack by the West. What do you make of what he shared with the people of Russia?
Well, I find that to be just the complete obverse of the truth. Putin attacked Ukraine. They pushed their forces up into Belarus. Belarus managed to stay neutral in it, essentially, although they allowed the Russians to come across. They attempted to seize the capital. They have committed atrocities, much as they've done in Syria and in Chechnya. They bombed hospitals. They've bombed schools and massacred civilians, along with kidnapping Ukrainian children. Putin is the one who's been indicted by the International Criminal Court, not Zelensky.
So some may ask, how can he be so detached from reality?
Well, I think Putin lives in his own reality. Putin wants to be Peter the Great. Putin wants to reestablish the Russian Empire. I think in his heart, he believes that Ukraine belongs to Russia, and he will not be satisfied until he takes back what he believes is properly Russian. Which bodes ill for the Baltic states, Poland, any of the now independent countries that were once under the sway of the Soviet Union, or once even centuries ago part of the Russian Empire.
And what does it tell you that we watch the events of today and the ceremonies around the Russia Victory Day events be so much scaled back, not just at the Kremlin, but in communities all across Russia? What does that indicate about his military might at this point?
I think that's a huge message. You know, what we need to understand is that this day in Russia is the equivalent of the 4th of July, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day rolled into one holiday. And the Russians and the Soviet Union have celebrated that since the end of World War II with massive, massive parades and massive displays of military might. When you have one tank rolling across Red Square on Victory Day, that shows that the Russians don't have any equipment left to parade. It shows a remarkable withdrawal of the Russian government from what has traditionally been a huge, huge celebration. So I think it sends quite a message. And I think, too, that those two drones that were shot down probably were actually a Russian ruse. They did that in order to justify scaling back the parade.
Right. And to that point, Ukraine has successfully shot down dozens of drones, even in the last couple of days. How much longer can Russia continue these attacks on civilian targets with a diminished quality in their military and a run on their resources?
Well, it seems that they're beginning to run low, unquestionably. And the quality of the Iranian drones that they purchased, my goodness, the Ukrainians are saying that they shot down 36 out of 36 that were fired at Kyiv. They were saying they shot down 23 out of 25 that were fired today. Those are tremendous numbers. And so Russia has wasted a lot of money, a lot of resources buying really ineffective drones from Iran. Initially, the drone and missile attacks had some success against civilian infrastructure, particularly the power grid. But the Ukrainians, with the assistance of the anti-air weapons that have been provided by NATO and by the U.S. have pretty clearly found an answer to the problem of Russian cruise missile and drone attacks.
We thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.